The jury duty guy said people fake ICU noises over the phone and wanted proof. The jury duty letter came while I was in Royal North Shore ICU in 2013 for a brain hemorrhage from an aneurysm. I was 4 days post-surgery when the letter came and bored. I read it in the hospital. Told them I couldn't. They said no excuse, do you have evidence? The nurse had me hold up my license, wrote a sign that said "Are you kidding mate?" and took a pic of me 80 scalp staples, black eye, IVs, and the spinal fluid drain in my head at my request. Never heard a peep after that, lol. Now to the comments. My jury duty summons was the last piece of mail I received before I became homeless for 4 months. I went, and had an awkward moment when they asked where to send the daily compensation check. I was not selected. Woohoo, $5. In Detroit you get $30 for the jurors pool day. If selected you get $40 and mileage reimbursement at 45 or 60 cents a mile. I got called for jury duty in Indiana and was asked to call a number and answer a few questions. I was asked if I was mentally and emotionally stable. I answered no. I was told that disqualified me for jury duty. I was so happy. I showed up and told them I feel we are not adequately compensated for our time off work, and therefore will only render non-guilty verdict to all cases I'm a part of. Never been asked to leave from anywhere that fast before. I believe jury nullification is legal and ethical, also works in my experience. Backstory. My dad was wrongly sentenced to a weekend in jail, successfully appealed. A few years later, he got a jury summons. He called the court to explain that he wasn't sure he could be unbiased after a bad experience. The clerk cut him off right there. Judge forgot the name. My dad was caught off guard and said, yeah, that's him. Clerk, click click click, I took you off the roll. Thank you for calling. Judge must have a reputation, right? Yep. Shit judge who is probably tenured or whatever. Doesn't matter how many duck UPS they make, they will / have served until they wanna retire or drop dead. For my 20s, I would get a jury summons, like clockwork, every 2 to 3 years. I know people who've never been called, and I've been around 7 times. Been summoned twice. The first time was literally a month after I turned 18. I was the youngest person in the pool and absolutely terrified. It was a car wreck case. The lawyers took one look at me and turned me loose. Second time I was finishing up classes in college 200 miles away, and yet the county I grew up in sent me a summons to my parents' house. I was taking heavy amounts of French courses and finals were approaching, and I had to give them my school information and have my professor email them and confirm that I was in fact a student. And the thousands I shelled out for tuition and taking my finals for my degree was actually more important than getting $6 for sitting in court 3 hours away. I was also only a month older than 18. I was actually chosen for the jury. It was a child molestation and false imprisonment case. We convicted him of 3 felonies. When I was on a jury, the judge came to talk to us after the verdict. He discussed the trial and results. He then told us that a group of French legal students were in the courtroom. They were completely surprised and impressed by the jury. Our jury included a doctor, a student, a retired guy, a couple of engineers, a stay-at-home mom and a construction worker among others. Then he told us we did a great job. I didn't want to be on a jury, but I am glad I had that experience. Do you know how and why they were surprised and impressed by the jury? Interactions between the judge, jury, and lawyers were behind closed doors, in my experience. Of course, I'm sure that varies. French juries are selected from lists provided by a magistrate in each region they oversee. I am sure there is a person on Reddit from France who knows more. It seems the lists are not usually representative of the population, so, I guess seeing people of very different backgrounds, sexes, ages, and colors was not usual. I was deployed to Afghanistan and came back to mail slating me for jury duty and a letter stating that I had been held in contempt of court. Learned I had a bench warrant for that contempt when I went to register my car. My battalion commander and sergeant major came down to the precinct to bail my ass out, and that courtroom was a hurricane. Only time I've ever seen a judge belittled in their own court and take it. I bet it was delicious. Did the little judge try to thank you for your service? Nope, that judge was a massive prick. One time my county asked me to go AWOL for jury duty. I was notified like a day or two before I was to PCS to Germany. I laughed at the lady over the phone when she suggested I come back by any means necessary. I found out that while I was aboard ship on deployment, I not only received a jury summons about a month after we left, but also that the judge tried to hold me in contempt of court for not showing. I found out about all this about 4 to 5 months after it happened. When my command found out about it, my sergeant major and my co both went down to the courthouse with me. That was a fun day. One of the few times I can honestly say my chain of command was looking out for me. I had a warrant for not registering for the draft, found out after I got home from my first deployment. Last time I went to jury duty I really pissed off the judge, but I was right. A list telling us what we can and cannot bring into the court. I wear hearing aids and I wore mine, but with no batteries. I'm sitting there and the judge was asking me a question and of course I didn't hear her. I pointed to the list that stated I couldn't bring in batteries, so my hearing aids were totally useless. We argued back and forth, but I was in the right and I went home. /r/MaliciousCompliance right there. Oh yeah. They definitely need to post that. I got jury duty once during an exam period and I let them know that it may be an issue as my exam dates for my forensic science degree hadn't been released yet and I've never been bothered again. That was 6 years ago. Would have gone for them to send me home because in Australia they don't want anyone on the jury that would understand the system more than the average person. Same thing happened to me in 1998. Sent in a copy of my exam schedule, got a letter back that I was excused for 60 days and they'd be contacting me again then. I never got called again until the summer of 2020, despite living in the same county the entire time. I still haven't actually gone in for jury duty, for obvious reasons. Reminds me of the joke that when you're on trial your fate is in the hands of a group of people not smart enough to avoid jury duty. My late mother told the judge at jury duty that she was on chemo and preferred not to serve. He asked her if she could prove it, so she asked him if he wanted her to take off her wig. He excused her. I mean, people will lie. It's normal to ask for documentation to be excused from requirements. Totally. Though I can also completely understand being frustrated/snarky depending on how you're asked. Like if the judge actually told you to prove it, I know I'd respond differently than if I was just asked to submit paperwork to the court. One guy I know just ignores the jury duty letters. I don't blame him though. I heard from a different guy that he missed the first 2 weeks of a college semester because of jury duty and he had to drop the whole semester. They refused to reschedule because school wasn't a valid excuse. School wasn't a valid excuse. That's what the judge's secretary told me when I stopped in to plead my case. Then she tore the letter I had received, and given her when we first started talking, in half, and said, "It is a good thing you never received this letter." I could have hugged her, but obviously I wasn't there since I never received the letter, so I didn't. It's so dumb. People literally pay thousands of dollars a semester. Older people these days don't understand how intense school has become. If you miss even a single day in some classes you have to almost exhaust yourself to catch up. I got out of county, not federal, jury duty a couple weeks ago because I said, truthfully, that I'm a stay-at-home mom and I also babysit a couple other kids to help friends and family, and jury duty would just be a pain in the ass for me unless the court decides to offer child care for jurors. Sorry to hear you went through that. Since you're here on Reddit, assuming things went well with your brain and hope all is well now, I'd guess that particular court had a lot of issues with people excusing themselves with outlandish scenarios. The county my parents live in is similar. You have to pretty much have to show no matter what, except scenarios like yours where evidence would be required, just to tell them your excuse. My mother had checkmarked the box where she has trouble with English once and they sent back asking for proof. I had no idea how to send in evidence of that. When I called them to ask, they said that they would get a translator so she could come in and prove that she couldn't speak English well enough. Made zero sense to me and such a colossal waste of resources. But apparently, they were having serious issues with most people just lying to get out of jury duty and couldn't get near enough jurors for their jury pool. OP replied. 2 months after that court had to be cleared permanently when a possum died in the air ducts and they couldn't get the stench out. Karma LOL. Did they wait for the judge to declare an odor in the court?